Hey there, Blockhead traders. Here, Blockhead traders, I must inform you that we are not financial professionals. Nothing we say should be considered financial advice. We offer our own thoughts and opinions to you, the viewer. We expect you to take these opinions, form your own financial conclusions, and make your own financial decisions. Today is Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024, and this is Blockhead Traders Weekly. In this week's episode, that's right, it's tax season time. Taxes, taxes, taxes. It's April 3rd. This will air here next week, so you'll still have time to read this, listen to this episode, and get your taxes in on time due April 15th here in the United States. If you're outside the United States, I guess you don't have to worry about that. Well, at least not U.S. taxes. But before we hop to that, I want to give a shout out to our Discord, link in the description below. You can click in there, say hello to myself, Viper, some of the other Blockhead traders. Love to hear what you're trading, love to hear what type of content you want to hear about. Also, you'll find a link to thetagang.com/sprocket888, where I post each and every one of my equity trades, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Last, this is available in an audio-only format wherever you get your podcast. If you can't find it there, let us know and we will get it there. But let's hop to this week's content. Viper, it is April, and April here in the United States means it is tax season time. And so I thought we might take a little bit of break from the equity world and just make a few mention about taxes and see, what kind of tax stories you might have going on. And I want to also mention a couple of tax advantage things that we can do as traders and investors and somebody that's trying to build wealth for a future point later on in life. So I got to ask you, did you file your taxes yet?
Oh, I did today as of this recording. So this is the latest I've ever gone. And we can get into why in a little bit as part of the discussion. But for anyone who doesn't know or is not familiar, obviously taxes involve the IRS. And they conveniently make that easy for you to remember if you just spell it out. THEIRS, because what's yours is theirs.
Yes, absolutely, Viper. And that makes me think of this image right here that I saw the other day. The IRS, like the sign says, it's right there. It's all theirs.
It is all theirs. So yeah, I did my taxes today, and it was particularly theirs. I was the first year that I've under-withheld, and that was due to trading activity, if you will. So that was a lesson learned that we can get to in a little bit. But we're what? I don't know, 12 days out?
Nope. This is I'm filed away, and I'll have to say this is one of the earlier times that I filed. I think I filed maybe a week or two ago, and I used to want to try to file real quick. And then I started learning that, why don't you just kind of wait it out a little bit? And I put together stuff, and everybody in my family kind of laughs at me because I got really excited for tax season. Not because I get to pay money or get money back or anything like that, really. I use it as a point in time to kind of summarize my accomplishments of the past year, as far as, withholding, whatever, but more so, how did my trading do? How did my investing do? How did my savings do? Right. And it's kind of that time of year where all of that gets kind of summarized up. And so I like to use it as a reflection back on my accomplishments over the year and, make pivots for the following year to say, hey, I'm going to do it this way or this, or make different, commitment times or targets as far as saving for this or savings for that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was weird this year because I knew I had this massive bill coming, and I knew I didn't think about it at the time that it happened, but I just, as in the weeks leading up to now, I started to realize oh shoot, that's a thing. Like if you withhold and there's a little bit of a penalty, it's nothing dramatic, but it's just one of those things that the weeks leading up to filing are always I'm always anxious of like, and some of it's maybe a sign that I need to do better tracking throughout the year, that I'm like, I don't even know what's it going to be. Is this going to be a complete wreck and, whatever. But once I'm in the heat of it doing it, and once I'm done, I feel the same way, as far as it's just a really good sync up of, oh, that's what I did. And it's, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, as far as bookkeeping and reporting and all of that stuff, that you're lifting up under all the placemats, under the rugs and all that stuff, and finding what did you do last year. And so that part is I would agree, somewhat exciting, as far as just tally it all up, zero it out, and now let's go into the fresh year.
So I do have a funny tax story I'll bring up here to talk you through, because it was kind of a several months in the making, and it's a state tax story. And if you recall, back in the COVID times of 2020, the federal government put out different stimulus money. Every state responded in different ways, as far as extending unemployment benefits to those people who were, furloughed for their job because things shut down, even though you might not have met the regular unemployment qualifications. There was all kinds of things that various states did. Well, in my particular state, there was a furlough or unemployment that you could file for when you were not really unemployed, but because of COVID and everything shutting down. If you were impacted by any of that, you could make a claim to the unemployment office, and they would give you a stipend for your time that you were not working and not making money. And you had to not be making money. It's not, if your job sent you home and still paid you, that was one thing. But most jobs, at least in my state, when that happened, they withheld that pay and they did not pay you. So it was kind of like a furlough, but it was a very short furlough depending on the situation. So anyway, it was a very big time of uncertainty, and we went ahead and we filed for that because we didn't really know what was going to happen, and we qualified. We got the benefit from that and everything, and time went on, and didn't think anything of it. And recently, well, not recently, over the summer, we got this letter from what appeared to be maybe the state of Ohio, maybe. And it basically said, hey, due to some mistakes and stuff like that, we actually realized that we might have over allocated benefits to you from the Job and Family Services Office, which is here in our state, the office that controlled that. But don't worry. You're not going to be in any trouble. You can just pay back the money. Go ahead and call this number or send a check to this place for your amount. And it was enough serious, but enough scammy that I'm like, I don't know about this. I didn't read anything about this in the paper. I didn't really see anything. I searched online. I couldn't find anything. I'm like, this has got to be a scam. And I said, but it kind of looks legit enough that I don't know. It might be serious. So we tried to call this number. Well, we found a number. It wasn't a call this number if you have questions. And we got put on hold. We asked, nobody answered. We'll call you back. We never really got in touch with anybody. And I said, man, this has got to be one of the best scams that I think I've ever gotten, because I was so close to basically paying it. But it was weird because you couldn't go to an official website to pay it or anything. It was call a number or mail this address, your check. And I was like, I just don't know about this. So nothing ever came of it. No other mailings, no other nothing. I thought, wow, that was pretty amazing. And even just a month or so ago, we were kind of joking around about it. Like, I remember that time. So fast forward to filing with taxes. Turned all my taxes in. And, the federal accepted your taxes. The state accepted your taxes. So that's great. About a week later, I get a letter in the mail from the state tax office. I'm like, that's weird. Maybe they just sent me a physical letter to let me know that they got my taxes, whatever. I was expecting a refund, not much, but a refund. And I opened up this letter, and the letter says, Mr. Block, thank you for filing your taxes. We owed you X dollars. However, we noticed that you were delinquent in our job and family services account of, Y dollars. Therefore, we have deducted this straight out of your return, and now we're even. So thank you very much, Mr. Block. And I laughed because I went back and I said, man, how much was that weird scammy thing? And it was exactly that amount. So turns out it wasn't a scam. Turns out it was legit. And I feel better knowing that I wasn't scammed, and they took it straight out of my the state of Ohio. I was like, we'll settle this up for you. So I paid it, not penalized for it, but that was just kind of my funny.
Yeah, I've never had anything quite like that, though I do almost not dread, but just don't look forward to the day that I get something in the mail, because it's always, the we will never email you or we will never call you, that sort of thing. I'm like, well, if you'll only mail me, that seems like a pretty decent attack vector for a scammer to take advantage of, and mail me something that looks super legit. And then I'll be like, well, you said you were going to mail me. But I haven't had anything quite like that. The only odd thing I've had was, it was years ago, when I bought my car. The car I had before the vehicle I have now was a Ford Fiesta, and it was weird because the dealership was doing some promotion of like, file your taxes and get it like $1,000 credit on your car or something like that. And I was like, all right, I mean, I got to do my taxes, so yeah, how do we do this? And they were like, oh, you just go down the street to, I think it was Liberty Tax Service, like one of those pop-up things. And I mean, it felt it felt pulled straight out of Better Call Saul. I think I walked into Saul Goodman's office. Like, it was like an old, I mean, the Liberty Tax things are like the spirit Halloween of tax season. They just start popping up in all these at least around here, they start popping up in all these abandoned places, gas stations, whatever. And it did not feel great. I mean, I knew that it was a legit location, but yeah, that was the only time I filed in person with somebody. And I was like, yeah, this is weird. And then I went back to the dealership, and like, there wasn't even any verification. They were like, oh, did you file your taxes? And I was like, yeah, here's, I didn't show them my whole taxes, but I was like, here's my return. And they're like, oh, okay. And then checked it off. I was like, oh, okay, so I could have just told you I did. I didn't actually have to do that and, feel like, where the heck am I? So that was weird. But other than that, I usually file online. But
didn't you feel patriotic going to Liberty Tax Service with that, beautiful logo?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get too wrapped up in the Better Call Saul analogy, but there absolutely was a blow up Statue of Liberty. I just can't remember if it was outside the building or actually on the roof. But
it would be really cool if it was one of those
never
blowy,
felt more patriotic.
wavy statue characters. Yes, there you go.
Wacky waving inflatable arm flailing too.
By the way, did you ever, and for as long as you owned that Ford Fiesta, did you ever get offered an extended car warranty? Because that's really where you hit it big, where they call you up and say, hey, I've got an extended car warranty for you.
Yeah. How did you know? That's what I needed. Yeah, that happens a lot. So,
nice.
I still feel
well, Viper, you mentioned something in there, and I think we should touch on it a little bit, where you were under-withholding. And this is, ironically, I feel it's almost a rite of passage for anybody that starts getting into trading and investing, because one of my very first years going through my options trading thing, I too was hit with an under-withholding penalty because I did not adequately, basically, in my case, I didn't even plan at all. I was like, oh, it'll be fine. I won't make that much money through this. And, it's probably okay. Maybe I have to pay a little bit of money, whatever. And I got hit with a penalty. It wasn't huge. It was 150, $200, something like that. But that's, there's a lot of things I could buy with 150, $200 that I couldn't buy because I gave it over to my buddy Uncle Sam. And so I think maybe I'll just kind of verbalize this a little bit with you. From that point forward, I said, wow, I am going to do a better job preparing for this. And my goal, I always try every year to basically get my taxes to zero. So I don't like to get a return and I don't like to pay money. And the reason that I don't like either of those options is because of what it means, right? If I get a big return back, a lot of people are like, yeah, look at that. I got a check. I'm going to pay down some debt or what have you. Well, what that's really representing is an interest-free loan that you gave the government because they don't pay you any interest on that. They basically say, yep, anyway, you paid us too much money, so here's this money back. So that's money I could have put in the market. I could have invested. I could have spent things on, right? So to me, that's a sunk cost. That's like giving somebody an interest-free loan. Would you do it? If you had a friend and they're like, hey, can I borrow, $1,000? I'll pay you back in a year. I'll give you the $1,000 back. No, you probably wouldn't do that. Maybe if it was a good friend or something like that. But the flip side is nobody likes to pay a bunch of money at tax time because, well, that's a big hole in your pocket depending on how much you pay. And so to me, the really sweet spot is not really owing much of anything, which means you can fully address, and maximize your returns and your capital throughout the year. And you don't come time of year where you get a big hole in your pocket.
Yep, pretty much. And that's where I've tried to be as well, is that sweet spot of neutral. And I mean, I have been getting a little lax in letting myself over-withhold a little bit for quite a while now, because that goes back to back when my wife was working. There's this whole thing. I think it's loosely referred to as the marriage tax penalty or something like that. That's not an official name. That's just, as I understand it, which not tax professionals, just like not financial professionals. So don't take this as perfectly interpreted. But when you're working, so when I had a job and she had a job and we were in two different tax brackets based on our income for our jobs, when we filed jointly, then that stuff combines, and then we ended up getting taxed more once her income tax rate was combined with mine and all that kind of stuff. And so because of that, back then I would over-withhold to kind of make up for that. So I was actually nailing pretty good at break even, plus or minus $500 or something like that. So when she stopped working, I also started dabbling with just very lightly in markets. It wasn't the genesis of this show. It was before that, but I still kind of played a little bit with investing. And then the first couple years, the tax return was a decent size. And I was like, oh, no, I'm over withholding. But then as I started playing around with investing and things like that, I had no idea what to expect as far as taxes on gains, capital gains. Spoiler alert, it's not that complicated, but it is intimidating. But nonetheless, I was in the very intimidated mode and mindset and black box of oh no, I made a trade. I must owe $1 million. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave it. We'll leave it over withheld. So that way, more than anything, I didn't want that large surprise bill. I was like, all right, let's just keep over withholding, and then I'll eat into that over withholding on anything owed for capital gains. And that kind of worked for a while, and that's where I've been at. But as I've gotten better with managing trading and managing investments and anticipating taxes and things like that, I've started to get back into that regularly over withheld scenario. And feeling like maybe I needed to pull that in, rein that in a little bit. But that was not the case this year. And I wish I could say it was because of some killer, repeatable, brilliant strategy that I'm doing. You know, like when you experienced it, it was because you were just cranking that options wheel and like doing this play over and over again. I just had one particular trade that just really popped off, and I knew it was coming. I didn't know to what extent it was going to hit, but I did at least think far enough forward to say, all right, this was a big gain. I'm going to lock up some of this cash and make sure that this cash is available come tax time, because that's obviously what I would say the number one. I don't know, there's so many risks, but for the sake of this video, the number one risk when people get into investing is you don't consider the fact that you're not taxed out the door. Like, I mean, your paycheck, that comes taxed and all that kind of stuff. But you get into the stock market, you start trading something, and something flies, and you sell it, and you're like, oh, I'm a genius. Guess what? Like, Uncle Sam's still coming. And depending on when in the year you did that, I've seen plenty of people completely forget. Like, say it's May, June, July that this happens. You sell it, you get all this, you have all these gains. You reinvest them. I mean, two scenarios: you blow it all, or you reinvest them, and then those reinvestments lose value and tank down. And then come tax time, you're like, oh wait, but I don't have that money anymore. That's something you got to think about. And so I had thought about that. That was a scenario I feared and have feared from the beginning of, like, if I ever make a big capital gain, I'm going to make sure that I lock up and have available a significant 25 or 30% of that gain in cash, ready to go for this exact moment. So I did. So hooray, hurrah. That cash is available, and it was just the anxiety of how much of that is it going to hurt? Did I do it? Did I not? And like you said, the penalty comes along, which it's comical to me for so many reasons that, I under-withhold and I'm penalized. I over-withhold, and then they're just like, oops, yeah, here's your money back. Like, no, I want my fee. I want my penalty against you for me over-withholding and getting money back. But this is not a zero-sum game when you're dealing with your taxes.
So let me share my strategy, which I started saying, hey, I'll share this. So one of the things that I do is I drip into my brokerage account. So I say, hey, every paycheck, this percent goes to my brokerage account, this percent goes to my mortgage, this percent goes to my groceries, yada, yada, yada. Well, one of those things says, hey, I'm going to stash away this percent for taxes. And I take a tiny little sliver and I deposit it into a special special savings account that I have. So it's a high yield savings, but so right now it's doing pretty good with interest rates these days. But once upon a time it wasn't doing so much. And the reason I do that is because it's a very liquid account, right? If I ever needed that for a rainy day or something like that, it's considered part of my rainy day funds. Then what I do is every quarter I go through and I take a look at my brokerage account. And every broker is going to do this. They're going to have somewhere in there where you can look up your cost basis. And they will actually summarize all of your realized gains and your unrealized gains for any date range that you put out there. And so I basically go in there and I say, what were my realized gains for this particular quarter? And a number will pop up. Sometimes it's a loss, sometimes it's a gain. If it's a loss, I do nothing. If it's a gain, I will then multiply whatever that gain is by my estimated tax bracket. So for me, my tax bracket really doesn't ever change year to year. So I know what my tax bracket was the previous year. So I just assume it's going to be that this year. So I multiply that number by whatever tax bracket I'm in. And then I take that amount of money out of that savings account that I have, and I log into the IRS.com and I make a payment. So the IRS will accept quarterly payments. You can log in, you can create an account in there. When you have to pay your taxes, you got to create an account anyway. And I think of it like a little bank or paying your credit card bill. You can log in there and it says, oh, what would you like to do? Would you like to pay your taxes for 2024, 2023? Would you like to pay an estimated tax? And so, I choose estimated tax, and you choose which quarter are you applying this estimated tax for. There's really, from what I can tell, no rule that says all of your payments have to be the same. I just go in there for that quarter and I say, you know what, I'm going to put in $500 or whatever the estimated payment is. I deposit it. It comes out of my checking account or my savings account, and goes in there, and it basically is just like a little ledger. Then when I go to do my filing, one of the questions that you ask are, hey, did you make any estimated payments? So I log into that account and I say, why, yes, I did. I made this payment in this quarter, this payment in this quarter, this payment in this quarter. And then boom, there it is. It rolls right up. And so far, this has been a very accurate way to help me keep hitting that zero basis. And it's effectively, sounds like you're doing this already, Viper. The only thing you're missing is once a quarter, go in and make a payment. Because what they'll do when you get into your penalty or under-withholding is actually charge you interest on what you've under-withheld for the year. But if you actually, come out with, and honestly, the under-withholding, you have to be off by quite a bit. I think you have to be off by like 20% or something like that. So there's a lot of slop there where you don't have to, hit zero right on the money. But constantly putting it in there. Now, some of the months where if I have a loss on my gain or something like that, I'm still dripping into that high savings account to pull out for taxes. So if I don't, then okay, great. That's just there for a rainy day.
Yeah, I like that setup, and I need to do more of that. So since this was the first time I dealt with it, like you said, I'm in spirit, in more than spirit, and in practice doing more of that than I realized, obviously with holding some of that cash on the side, but not connecting the dots to just go to the IRS website and make that payment. So this particular time around, what I did was when I filed, when you under-withhold, as you're checking out, finishing your filing, they ask you questions like, hey, do you want to not be in this scenario next year? You want to set up the form, I believe, is called a 1040 ES. ES, I assume, for estimated, 1040 estimated or something to that effect. And so they were like, hey, do you want to fill out a 1040 ES to make these quarterly payments? So I went ahead and did that this year because I do know that next year, like this year already, some of that play that was the big gainer from last year, some of that rolled over into the new year. So I know that that's still a thing and it's still happening. So I knew I was going to, if I kept everything the same, I was going to under-withhold again this year. So I went ahead and did the 1040 ES. So that was my strategy for this year, was do the 1040 ES. I have no idea. Like, I filled out how much I wanted to pay per quarter. So I at least put that into the form. I don't know what that's going to functionally look like. If I'm going to get a mailer that says, hey, it's time, here's your bill, go to the website and pay it. And I should have just gone to the website to begin with, and that would have cut out all of the paper traffic, but we'll find out. But I at least was taking the proactive step of acknowledging it's going to happen again next year. All estimations considered, though I could try now with the whole year in front of me, because this happened like December last year. So now with the whole year in front of me, I could get a little more savvy with some different tax loss harvesting strategies and things like that as the year unfolds. And that absolutely will be on my mind as I continue to go through the year, because not everything's going to be a winner. And so sometimes things are just not going to work out and be losers. But that's okay.
So, fun fact, you're not on the hook for anything with your ESs, 1040 ESs. First year that I under-withheld, did the same thing as you. I'm like, oh my gosh, I better fill this out. So I fill this out. They give you all these little coupon cards, which basically just say, hey, pull this out in 3 months and pay this. Pull this out in 3 months and pay this. Nobody holds you to that. So, you can go to the IRS, you can make your deposits, you can totally pivot and deposit more. You could totally deposit less. So you're not really on the hook there.
That's good to know, because as you said, your strategy, I was like, no, I want to do that. Wait, don't file, pull that out. But that makes sense. So now I can at least claim, hey, you guys shocked me. Like if I ever get audited, like, hey, look at that, good faith. I was going to do the thing and
Yep.
hold some credit up or
So,
something.
Viper, I do want to bring up one more topic here today, which is sort of tax related, and it was in the screenshot or in the intro there, in the little memes that we had put up there on the screen. An HSA, health savings account. This is I guess personal soapbox or my take on the HSA, that I really feel that this is an underappreciated thing that even I myself was very kind of taken aback by when I first heard about the HSA, and I kind of frowned upon it. I actually think I might have mentioned this in the way back machine in a previous episode. I'll check it, and if I did, I'll put a link up above in this. But at the time that I first heard about an HSA was years and years and years ago. And my particular employer had really, really good benefits. We did not pay anything out of pocket, and we had all of our medical expenses paid, save like a $10 copay. Like it was the Cadillac of Cadillac when it comes to health savings, health care offered by your employer. And this was pre-financial crisis time. One of the outcomes of the financial crisis, so we're going back to 2008 here, was that a lot of employer benefits started changing, and one of the things for our health insurance that changed is they were shifting away from this Cadillac plan, and they were starting to go to an HSA or one of the options. So there was the PPO or preferred provider or something, right? That's what we had. And they were moving more to this HSA type of account where they were going to deposit X dollars into your HSA. And you could also contribute to the HSA. And I don't know if it was just coming from where I was, but I viewed this whole thing as, oh, they're just really cheaping out. This HSA is just putting the burden on me, blah, 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 blah. So I really wasn't into it. Fast forward into multiple years later when I really started looking into it, and I believe very strongly that everybody should be should be contributing very heavily to an HSA. And one thing I didn't realize, you don't need to get it through your employer. You can go out to a brokerage account and open up your own HSA. Like you don't need to have your employer to offer it. And the other thing is, if your employer does offer it, you're not, the only way you can contribute, right, is not by contributing through your paycheck, right? I thought initially when I first, started working on this, the only way I could put money in my HSA was through paycheck contributions. And then I found out that you could get HSAs without being there. And then I found out that even if you had them, you could deposit to them at any point in time of the year. Now there's a limit to how much you can put in an HSA annually, but you don't have to do it through paycheck withdrawals. As soon as I figured that out, I stopped doing the paycheck withdrawals, because this allowed me the flexibility to kind of put more one month, not as much the next month, and contribute how I have. So why is HSA so beneficial? Why am I such a big proponent of it? I'll tell you why. It's referred to as a triple tax advantaged account because the money that you put in to the HSA is tax free. So for every dollar I put in, I can deduct $1 out of my income. So this means every dollar you put in, you are not taxed on that dollar. That's tax benefit one. tax benefit 2 is while the money is in the HSA growing, right? It grows tax free. So as it's invested, as it's in there, and these HSAs, when you get them through your brokerage and stuff, you can buy Tesla stock if you want. You can, I mean, it's trading. Like you can do anything on the market depending on where you get your HSA. But I have one that is fully every instrument that you can trade on the market, I can trade in my HSA. So all those gains are grown tax-free. Third tax advantage, when you take money out of the HSA to spend it for qualified medical expenses, no tax, tax-free. Tax-free going in, tax-free while it's in, tax-free while it's out, going out. Triple tax advantage. And you might think, oh my goodness, well, I'm never going to have medical bills. That's a waste. That's locking it up for that specific purpose. Well, in my experience, benefits have been going down, 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 right? Healthcare has been going up, up, up. And it qualifies whether or not it is Tylenol, right? That counts. If you get a blood pressure cuff at, Walgreens, that counts. It's any medical related expense, prescription drugs, doctor visits, rehabilitation from physical therapy. If you think about it, it is a considerable advantage as you get older, right? Any people that out there have aging parents or things like that, that's money that is growing all this time. And that's money you can pay out of your HSA that you don't have to pay out of your 401k. You don't have to pay out of your IRA. You don't have to pay out of your pension, right? And it's tax-free. So, you might have medical expenses. You will have medical expenses later on in life. It might be for nursing home care. It might be for anything like that, right? And the amount of power and savings in there. And you can also pass it on. Like it doesn't just disappear when you die, right? It's like a retirement account. It's a different type of retirement account. You can send that on to your heirs, your spouse, your children, things like that. So I just want to take this time to bring it up because it's tax season. And I think that is one of the most underrated things that you can contribute to that has real tangible benefits, both before you retire, when you retire, and even after you're gone.
Yeah. And I don't know, I feel like it's maybe the fourth prong that as far as I understand it, once you retire, it no longer has to be health medical related, that it is a retirement account, Roth IRA-ish. And so once you retire and hit that 65 and then you convert over to Medicare, Medicaid, whatever, like it just becomes an open retirement account.
That could be. I'm not
for anything.
We're not tax professionals, so double check us on that. But to me, it's, you can only contribute $6,000 a year to an IRA. Well, guess what? You can do $7,200 to an HSA. So boom, right there, you got $11,200 that you could contribute to tax advantaged accounts. And so it's another vehicle that you can put things in, and you don't have to do the max, right? Just do $500, do something, but grow it.
Yeah. I would say there's two financial vehicles that are my favorite things. And one is the UGMA/UTMA account that we discussed on a previous episode that you introduced me to, which is a tax advantaged account for your children. And then the other one is the HSA, because I went through the same sort of process that you did, where my employer previously had this amazing health plan. The birth of our first child was just ridiculously well covered, and she had significant surgeries after that and all of that. Never once, did I ever have to worry about any of the bills or anything like that, because the insurance was that good. So when that pivot happened at my employer as well, and they really pushed away from that good, what was, I don't want to say good plan, but that first plan, and really started pushing this consumer driven health plan with an HSA attached to it and high deductible. I kind of went through the same thing of like, oh man, this sucks. Like this all of a sudden my out-of-pocket max goes way up, and my deductible, there's this huge deductible on it, where I have to pay a lot of this money before anything gets covered and all this kind of stuff. So I took the strategy, slightly like toe in the water, where I was like, all right, I'm going to make this work for us. So my employer put in a particular initial amount, and they still do every year. And then I'm on my own how I want to use the account after that. So my initial strategy was pretty simple. It said, what is my out-of-pocket max for the year? And then what, just I'll do the math per paycheck. What do I have to put into the account to hit that out-of-pocket max? And so, bills could be front run at the beginning of the year or whatever, but by the end of the year, I will have put in my out-of-pocket max for the year. So in a worst case scenario, the end of the year, I could break even on any medical expenses and things like that. Best case scenario, we don't have a bunch of bills, and then all of a sudden I have a bunch of money in the account at the end of the year. And so when I thought I was being clever, as I rolled from that first year into the second year, I was like, okay, sweet. Now I'll lower my paycheck deposit into the account, withdraw into the account, because I had leftovers from the previous year. So I kept running on this mentality of, let's just make sure I have the out-of-pocket max for the year in the account, and we're all good. And I did that for a few years, had some accumulate, but then I started to learn more about the account, and I was like, wait, I can invest this, and I could potentially grow the money and tax-free. And then I talked to somebody at work who's getting pretty near retirement age. And she was like, oh man, I max that thing out. She's like, I don't even go to the doctor. She's like, but I max that account out because it's just ridiculously tax advantaged. And so that's when I started realizing, like, oh, wait a second, like it is. And so now I've pivoted into the max the account out mentality. And then on the investment side, this is just personal preference, but I'll keep a buffer of just cash in the account. And that buffer is the deductible amount. And then there's another buffer of just a very conservative investment chunk where I'll just, do that into Fidelity ETFs, conservative ETFs, that sort of thing that just grow 3, 4, 5% per year or something like that. Pretty steady, stable stuff. And then if I keep rolling and then have a larger chunk, then there will be a third tier, which I'm not quite at yet at this point, but a third tier that maybe, still not going to be like, day trading, highly volatile stocks or things like that, but a third tier that's a little more risk on because I have these other tiers of insurance money for medical expenses. So that's my strategy now. And once you start the snowball rolling, whatever the amount is for you, however much, it doesn't like Sprocket said, don't have to max it out. Whatever you're putting in, once you start to see the snowball effect of just having the cash available, and then if you take some of it and put it into a light, like I said, conservative ETF sort of thing, all of a sudden, a couple really, especially if you're young, a couple good years of health, and all of a sudden there's a decent amount of money there, and you're like, hey, this is great. And then it just all starts to click from there. So that's certainly one of my favorite vehicles as well, especially with a child with prescription medicine. That there's prices of that go up and down all the time, but that comes out of the HSA. Anytime we go to the eye doctor, HSA.
Yeah, pro tip for you, Viper. You mentioned you keep a certain chunk in cash. I'm guessing that's so that it doesn't really lose value and you can pay it out, when you need to yourself for those upcoming medical expenses. Similar to what I do in my brokerage account that we've talked about as far as laddering into treasuries. My HSA really doesn't pay much interest on the cash that sits in there. I think it pays like 0.5%. But because I can buy any instrument on the market, I can put that into 4-week treasuries, divided up over, 4-week periods, buying into a treasury every week, because there's an auction every week. If I ever was in a pinch, you can dump those treasuries basically for exactly what you bought them for. Maybe you lose 25 cents, a buck, something like that. But you're going to get about, well, right now it's 5.25% interest on those 4-week treasuries and annualized. So it's a way you can kind of keep that cash earning something without getting into an index fund where, if the market tanks tomorrow, you're in trouble. And it's still liquid enough that you can dump it and get your cash out.
I will have to look at that. I mean, that sounds like a tier 1.5 maybe, because some of that cash is because our HSA comes with a debit card, and so some of the cash is just to make sure there's at least I don't know $400 or $500 to swipe the debit card and it's there. But yeah, there is definitely times where the cash will be this weird in between of like I don't want to fully take it to step 2 of like the ETF stuff, but it's also like you said sitting there not doing anything. So that would be something to look into for sure.
Yep, definitely, Viper. Shout out to the HSA. So that brings us to the end of this week's episode of taxes, taxes, taxes. And, wherever you fall on your opinion of taxes, it is a time of year that you can kind of summarize the work that you've done or the outcome that has been the previous year. Use it to reflect back on that, set your goals for the upcoming year, plan for your taxes. And don't let it discourage you. There's a lot of things. Take this opportunity to look into different products that you can leverage contributions to help lower your tax burden and also give yourself an assist in future years. IRAs, 401ks, HSAs, and all these different tax advantage things that exist out there. And don't write them off initially, right? Do a little due diligence on them, because some of these things you'll be like, wow, actually, like Viper and myself, we had a sour opinion at first of an HSA, and then when we really started looking into it, and seeing some of the benefits and yields from it, we're like, wow, what was wrong with old me? What an idiot he was. And so, all this stuff is out there. Take the time to look through it and reflect back. Otherwise, I hope you guys are having a exciting time out there in the market. Finally starts to think we might get a little bit of volatility creeping back in the market, which I love for premium selling. We still got a ways to go because right now volatility is pretty stinking low and premium selling isn't that amazing or exciting these days. So good luck out there in whatever you're trading. Have fun and remember, think outside the block.